Hello, thank you for tuning in to the Rashad Mitchell show on Spreaker.com for February 23rd, 2016. Your host is Rashad Mitchell, which is yours truly, speaking from the comfort of my own home, my own house, home that I reside at in Paterson, New Jersey. I'm here to talk about the NBA recap and some other things, but first we're going to start with the NBA recap. Look at the Golden State Warriors, who got their 50th win yesterday. There was their 50th wins. They were the only team to get to 50 wins faster than any team in NBA history. So kudos to the Warriors. Obviously, they have other loftier goals to reach outside of just winning 50 games, but they were the fastest to win 50 games. But now they 50-5. Curry had 36 points. They squandered a 23-point lead, but they was able to beat the Atlanta Hawks 102-95. 102-92. A 10-point win. This team is just going to keep on winning, man. Unless on this road trip they lose to the Thunder, they probably only going to have 2 losses on this road trip. But Klay Thompson had 27 points, along with 5 3-point shots. Draymond Green was his versatile self with 14 rebounds and 9 assists. Yes, he had 6 points, but he made contributions in other areas. This was a big win for them, obviously, because they are consistent. They're not used to losing. So they are up 50-5, best record in the league. But it's all about what they do in the playoffs. They're going to be this. People going to keep paying attention to this team because the question is, can they win at least 70 games? Can they win 20 more games? Can they go past the Bulls' 72-10 mark that they put up in 96 during the 95-96 season? Can they do that? We'll see. We shall see. For Atlanta, they put up a valiant effort. They was down 23 points, and they was able to come back. They went on a 28-6 run. Actually had the lead in the fourth quarter, but it wasn't good enough. So kudos to the Hawks. Even though they lost, they kept fighting. But the Warriors are unbeatable. They tough to beat. They only got 5 losses, 50-5. So moving on in the recap of last night's games. Surprisingly, the Cleveland Cavaliers, after their big win over OKC, lost to Detroit at home, 96-88. A surprising loss. I mean, I don't know, maybe they got too pumped up over beating Oklahoma City. But for every reason, Cleveland lost last night to the Pistons, 96-88. Reggie Jackson for the Pistons had 23 points. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had 19 points, and they snapped their 5-game losing streak. So they back in the winning side of things. And this is the same Detroit team that lost the previous day before yesterday to the Pelicans of New Orleans, where Anthony Davis had 59 points and 20 rebounds. Andre Drummond had 15 rebounds. The Pistons just dominate this game. They had an 18-point lead. Obviously, in basketball, no lead is safe. It's always going to be a team that's going to try to make a run. Kyrie Irving had 30 points. Kevin Love had 24 points. LeBron James was just off last night. He scored just 12 points, 5 of 18 from the floor. He missed all 4 of his 3-point shots, and he committed 6 turnovers. So he had a bad night. But when you look at Irving, Love, they did their thing, but they didn't get enough for James. But this still is a surprising loss because, you would think that at home, coming off a big win, they wouldn't have such a major letdown, but especially for a team that was in the finals the previous year. But give credit to Detroit. Detroit did their thing. And matter of fact, what's interesting is that Detroit did beat Cleveland on November 17th, 104-99. So they have the 2-1 lead in this regular season series in terms of the matchups. They lost to Cleveland at Detroit on January 29th, 114-106, and then they come back and beat Cleveland 96-88. So they have a 2-1 lead in this regular season matchup. They'll play again April the 13th. So that was a surprising matchup. That was the results was surprising, not the matchup, but just the results of them losing like that was surprising to me. So they'll give credit to Detroit. They're an NBA team like everybody else. If you don't bring your A game, you're gonna get beat. So moving on, the Pistons will host Philadelphia on Wednesday, and Cleveland will host Charlotte on Wednesday as well. So that's a story on the Cleveland Cavaliers losing last night as the Pistons snap a 5-game losing streak and winning 96-88. Once again, this is Rashad Mitchell on the Rashad Mitchell Show. I'm your host, Rashad Mitchell. I'm doing this show live on Spreaker.com. Thanks for those who are listening and those who are going to listen later. As I continue on my recap of the NBA, another game that stood out was Minnesota and Boston. Minnesota and Boston played a great game last night, and Minnesota won 124-122. Minnesota has a great, promising future, a promising team. When you look at Karl Anthony Towns, Ricky Rubio, Anthony Wiggins, guys like that to look at this team, they're going to be pretty good in the Western Conference in years to come. This Karl Anthony Towns is definitely not a bust. He's definitely representing himself to the fullest. He's having one of the best rookie seasons for a big man in the last 20 years, and definitely showed that last night. This guy has the total package. He's great at the hook shots. He's good at doing the hook shots and the up and unders and the 3-point shots. He had a great performance last night. 28 points, 13 rebounds, and 4 assists. A very great game from Karl Anthony Towns. And when you look at this game, Minnesota had a 16-point lead. Obviously, they could not sustain that lead and build on that lead, but they was able to hold on for dear life, because if Marcus Smart of the Celtics did not miss a 3-pointer at the buzzer, it went off the back iron, they would have lost probably. So, but kudos to Timberwolves. They getting the job done. They won the game, and Karl Anthony Towns just continued to be sensational as the year goes on. Once again, this is the Rashad Mitchell Show. They evened the matchup series 1-1 because Boston beat Minnesota 113-99 on December 21st. Yesterday, they evened the matchup 124-122. As far as the Celtics are concerned, their catalyst on their side was Jay Crowder, 27 points and 9 rebounds. So they was able to make it happen, but they was out rebounded 51-38. Zach LaVine, who is the slam dunk champion for the second consecutive year, showed that he cannot just be a slam dunk champion. He can definitely play. He was 4 for 5 for 3-point range and scored 16 points. Andrew Wiggins had 17 points as well. So give all the credit to the Timberwolves. They did their thing last night. Big win for the Minnesota Timberwolves, who has a bright future. And also in the NBA last night, I got to definitely analyze this overtime matchup between the Miami Heat and the Indiana Pacers, which once was a rivalry between these two. Obviously, that hasn't been the case since LeBron James left to go play with Cleveland. It's just another matchup. But this was a very interesting game last night, as both teams trying to fight for a playoff spot. The thing is that Indiana got off to a great start. They opened up the game 11-0. Now Miami is very banged up. They don't have Chris Bosh, Luol Deng. I think he played. I don't know. Let me see. Did he play last night? There's some right here that he had a dislocated finger. They had to be put back into place. Well, maybe he did play. But anyway, Dwayne Wade missed his first shots. Bino Udrich was out with a right foot injury. But Dragic carried the load with 24 points. Hassan Whiteside had 19 points and 18 rebounds. And the Heat are off to a great start so far in the second half of the season of the NBA. And they won a third consecutive game by a score of 101-93 in overtime. They rallied from a 14-point deficit, able to hold it down in overtime and win. 16 points was chipped in by Wade. Deng did play last night. He had 13 points, 16 rebounds. Justice Winslow scored 15 points. They had 66 rebounds for the second consecutive game. Tough loss for the Indiana Pacers. Paul George did his thing, 31 points, 11 rebounds. Miles Turner had 16 points. But their starting backcourt did not play that well as far as shooting the ball from the perimeter. Monte Ellis and George Hill missed 22 of 24 shots. Ellis was 2 for 17, which is the worst game in the NBA this season for anyone taking 15 or more shots. So the Pacers missed their first 6 attempts of the extra section, and Miami took control. A very tough loss. When you lead by 14 points, at least 14 points, you should be able to close the deal, but it didn't happen for the Indiana Pacers. So it is what it is. These two teams just fighting for a spot in the playoffs. See what can be done. We'll see. Miami Heat are playing great right now. They're going to be challenged and tested. They play the Golden State Warriors at their place tomorrow. We'll see what happens. So that's an interesting game right there for last night. These two teams have met 4 times so far in this regular season. Indiana won the first meeting 90-87 on November 6th. On December 11th, Indiana won 96-83. On January 4th, Miami won 103-100 over Indiana. And then February 22nd, which was yesterday, they won 101-93. So this matchup is knotted up at 2-2. I don't know if they play anymore. I think that was their last regular season matchup. So it is what it is. Gotta give credit to Miami. They are competing hard. They fighting for a spot in the playoffs, and give all the credit to the Heat. So that ends my recap of the NBA from last night. I didn't want to go over so many games, but just felt that those games was what stood out. As far as like tonight's games for February 23rd, there are 5 games played. Orlando and Philadelphia. New Orleans Pelicans play Washington tonight. Sacramento play Denver tonight. Houston play Utah tonight. And Portland plays Brooklyn tonight. There's only 5 games on tonight, so it's going to be interesting second half as a whole. But the team that's going to get like a lot of attention, obviously, is the Golden State Warriors, man. Can this team truly go all the way to 70 games or 72 games? Can they win 73 games? Can they go all the way without having a double-digit losses? Also, what they've achieved is that they have not lost 2 games in a row. They've been able to be so consistent. They're going to be consistent. You're going to be consistent anyway if you only have, a 2-game losing streak 1 or 2 times. But you can be consistent like that. What they're doing is just impressive. But it all comes down to playoff time. And can Golden State go all the way? But I will be discussing their games, because every game from here on out is going to be a must-watch, because they're going after history. The way they're playing right now, they're going after it. That's what it seems like. So I don't know what's going on in their heads and their hearts and in their locker room, but it is what it is. And give all the credit to the Warriors for playing excellent basketball. Now I'm going to transition myself to continuing on the 4-part series. This is part 4 of looking at this book that I bought several years ago, Who's Better, Who's Best in Football, about the top 60 NFL players of the past 60 years. This is going to be a great book to finish and end with. So far, I'm on number 27 that I'm going to talk about. Is a guy who played with the Buffalo Bills and the Washington Redskins, but obviously made his mark as a Buffalo Bill, in the form of Bruce Smith. Bruce Smith, number 27, was on Steve Silverman's list of top 60 NFL players. Bruce Smith obviously was in the Hall of Fame in Canton. He's in the Hall of Fame right now, so that's no easy. This guy had 200 sacks, which is first in all-time sack leaders. He has 200 sacks. And the thing about Smith is that he was just great at opening things up for the other guys. His prowess opening up pass rush angles for Darryl Talley and linebacker Cornelius Bennett. He was just as good as Reggie White. He was a guy that was able to just make plays against the run and against the pass. Obviously, he had 200 sacks for a defensive end. He was drafted in 1985 out of Virginia Tech. But he had issues with his body. He wasn't in the best shape of his career, but he able to get past that, get better, be in great condition, and he will become the most artistic pass rusher the game has ever known. He had the moves, the lightning speed, his ability to combine the two and just dominate the opposing tackles. So it was just something that he had brought to the table. And obviously he was part of a Bills team that won 4 consecutive AFC Championship games and went to 4 consecutive Super Bowls, which would never be matched in today's NFL. His best season was in 1990 when he had 19 sacks. And from that point on through the next 7 seasons, he will be double team on every play. Because when you're that great, you're going to get a lot of attention moving forward, and that's what happened with Bruce Smith. Despite the speed, strength, and skill, he would get double teamed a lot, and that's the part of his greatness. And even Smith at the time felt that he was the best defensive end to ever play the game. He knew why Reggie White had a lot of supporters and Deacon Jones, but he doesn't take a back seat. According to a quote from this book, he said, "I'm not saying that I'm the best defensive end pass rusher to play the game just because I'm the NFL all-time sack leader, but because of the degree of difficulty I had to overcome to achieve that feat." He also mentioned that playing in a 3-4 defense throughout the majority of his career, having so much responsibility against the run, made his job tougher than any other defensive lineman's. Smith's determination made blocking him against the run an exhaustive process. Offensive tackles block speedy defensive ends to the outside, and the running backs cut inside the defensive end to make their yardage. But Smith's quickness allowed him to catch and bring the running back down unless the tackle was able to sustain the block for the whole play. So he just feels that he was the best pass rusher on the defensive end side of things because of the degree of difficulty. And you know what? He could be right. He could be on point with that argument of being the best defensive end ever. Obviously, he definitely have the numbers to back it up. 200 sacks, 43 forced fumbles, 15 fumble recoveries, and 1,078 tackles. I mean, that's a strong case right there. So that's the number 27, Bruce Smith. Next on the list is Deion Sanders. Very low to me, but again, that's his opinion that he wants to include on the list of the top 60 players in the last 60 years. Deion Sanders, a guy who's drafted out of Atlanta Falcons in 1989. I think he was the best cornerback I've ever seen because he had the ability to shut down the whole side of his own field where he was covering a guy. He had the ability to shut down his side of the field, and he was just great at leaving himself on the island against the best receiver. And that became his trademark, where he didn't need any assistance to be covering the guy. And he could do it all by himself because he had the great speed. Coming out of Florida State, in 1989, fifth pick overall in the first round. I mean, he definitely was going to do that. He was definitely going to represent himself like he was supposed to, and he did that. So he has great battles against Michael Irvin or Jerry Rice. But anyway, when you look at Deion Sanders, 9 of his 53 regular season interceptions were returned for touchdowns, which tied a second best all time. His career high for interceptions in a single season was 7 in 1993. And it's a surprising number because it's not higher enough, but that's because Sanders was just dominant in the coverage zone. When he was covering somebody, he wasn't going to get that many interceptions to begin with because his ability to shut down his side of the field. Also, he was a great kickoff return guy, a great punt return guy. When he got the ball in his hands, he returned 6 punts for touchdowns. He returned 3 kickoff returns for touchdowns. I mean, this guy was the most dangerous return guy in the league. 19 total non-offensive touchdowns still stands today as a league record. 19 total non-offensive touchdowns. He played with the Falcons, the 49ers, the Cowboys, the Ravens. So he definitely lived up to the prime time, moniker. Won a couple of Super Bowls in 1994 and 1995. He had a great year in 1994. We had 303 interception return yards in 1994. Yes, he was a high stepper and he could rub people the wrong way with his swagger, but he made it up, with action, and that's why Deion Sanders is a Hall of Famer and a great player at his position. All right, that's number 26. Number 25. I'll take a look at Jim Parker. Jim Parker was one of the main reasons why John Unitas was able to become the quarterback that he was. Offensive lineman. Came out of Ohio State, a great run blocker. He was one of the best pass blockers ever, as far as pass blockers. He had that desire to protect Unitas, keep him from getting hurt. He just had that affection for the quarterback that he protected in John Unitas. He was the most versatile of blockers. He played for 11 years in Baltimore and was named to the All-Pro team 8 times. He made it at guard 4 times and at tackle 4 other times. Parker was the biggest man the Colts had ever drafted when he was selected with the 8th overall pick in 1957. He stood 6'3", weighed 273 pounds, which was unheard of at that size at the time. He played on both sides of the lines at Ohio State, but pro scouts felt that Parker was better suited to defense. But Eubanks saw Parker's quick feet. Coach Weeb Eubank saw Parker's quick feet, his strong hands, and his overall awareness made him better suited to become a great blocker. So he started out at tackle because he was big, strong, and fast to handle the best pass rushers in the game. So Eubank saw that Parker might be even better guard because he had become such a great technician. He switched Parker to guard midway through the 1962 season, and at the end of the year, he was named an All-Pro at both positions. He was named to the All-Pro team at guard from 1963 through 1965 as well. There was no wasted movement or energy with Parker. Everything was done to keep the pass rusher out of the backfield or open a bigger lane for the running game. He used his body to slam defensive linemen to the ground to shield the skilled position players. He did his thing. He was a dominant player. Dominant. Great. That's the story on Jim Parker. Next, number 24. And this guy wouldn't be able to play in this league today because, the way the defensive backs can't do certain things. Mel Blount probably be flagged a lot of times if he played in today's game. Mel Blount is number 24 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, when you look at Mel Blount, he was great at the bump and run coverage. He did not invent it. I think that honor belongs to Willie Brown in a sense. But Mel Blount perfected that bump and run coverage as a cornerback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a remarkable athlete. And he's able to just have the total package. Whether the size, the speed, the quickness, the toughness. Mel Blount had all those things. And Mel Blount was just an incredible cornerback. Came out of Southern University. Definitely made his mark, especially started in 1972, where he did not get beaten for a touchdown all that year of 1972. 3 years later, he was the most valuable defensive player by the Associated Press. He became the first cornerback to earn this award. He had 57 interceptions as well as 13 fumble recoveries and a career that earned him 5 trips to the Pro Bowl. But the numbers don't really stack up or tell the reason why Blount was so great. He had that desire to cover and tackle. That was his signature. He was sharper mentally than all of his opponents and had that physical edge allowed him to dominate. He was able to dominate against Fred Biletnikoff, Isaac Curtis, and Cliff Branch. His bump and run coverage was so effective that the NFL decided to come to a conclusion that defensive dominance was not good for the game. And that's why, like I said, when you look at a Mel Blount, he couldn't play today because of the bump and run, because the offenses are so far ahead of the defenses. So the defense can't do what he did back in his time. So when you look at Mel Blount, man, he definitely wouldn't play in today's NFL because they give so much and so many advantages to the offense, man. It's like the defense can't win. I mean, you can't be physical. You can't do anything. So the dominance of what he brought to the NFL during the time of the 70s, the NFL felt it wasn't good for the game. So here's what happens: that the rules were changed, and Mel Blount was no longer allowed to bump receivers as they got past the 5-yard mark. So that's why I keep bringing up that Mel Blount could not play today. He could not play in today's NFL because of the fact that it wouldn't have worked if he played today. Once again, this is the Rashad Mitchell Show live on Spreaker. Yeah, man, Mel Blount was a great player, man. He couldn't play today. So what happened was, again, the rule changed and Blount was no longer allowed to play bump and run that got past, the 5-yard mark. He couldn't do that. So moving on, he adjusted to that, because what happened was he changed his tactics and he adjusted. What he did was he played the trail technique, in which he let the receivers get ahead of him. And then he would turn on the speed that he had that allowed him to come in, steal the pass, or deflect it away. So just because, everything was turned around with the rule changes and they couldn't do the bump and run, he adjusted. Now, that's not easy to adjust to the rules that is catered to the offense and be totally opposite of what the defense had to deal with. He was able to adjust anyway. He was able to still adjust and make the plays that he had to make for the Steelers defense. And also his hunger and thirst to being great was like the key to his long-term success. He was one of the toughest practice players to ever wear a uniform, and he honed his skills, going up against Lynn Swann, going up against John Stallworth in practice every day. That made him even a better player on the field against anybody. He was just driven to be successful every time he took the field. He didn't want anybody to catch a pass against him. That was his motivation during his 14-year career. He even said in the quote that if the scales were balanced, there was nobody I couldn't cover. That's what motivated me, drove me to be as good as I was. I was in front of 50,000 people in the stands and millions on TV. I didn't want to be embarrassed. Well, Blount definitely did a great job of not being embarrassed, because obviously he's a Hall of Fame cornerback and he's one of the greats, Mel Blount. Next, another guy maybe should be much higher, but he's definitely a guy that's underrated when you talk about quarterbacks. Otto Graham. Steve Silverman had him at number 23. Now, I agree, he should be on this list. Now, he's way, way before my time. That's obvious, but I'm familiar with Otto Graham, because here's a guy who won 7 NFL championships. I repeat, 7 NFL championships. 7. More than any quarterback who's ever won. He won more championships than Joe Montana, John Unitas, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, John Elway. I mean, this guy has won 7 NFL championships, but he's underrated. For a 10-year period as a Cleveland Brown quarterback, Graham led the team to 10 championship games, and they won 7 of those title games. Think about that. A 10-year stretch, I think, from 1946 to 1955. He went to 10 championship games and won 7 of them. And not only that, he was 105 and 17-4 during his time as a Cleveland Brown quarterback. So this guy was no joke. I mean, one year that stood out for him was he completed 181 of 364 passes for a career high 2,816 yards passing. He threw 20 touchdowns. Yes, he threw 20 interceptions, but they won the NFL's American Conference. Yes, they lost to Detroit Lions, but that was a great year. Then the next year, he completed 167 of 258 passes for 2,722 yards. And he had a 64.7 completion percentage. So he was very, efficient with his passing. But the thing that stands out, he's a flat out winner. I mean, this guy won when he was a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. And obviously the Cleveland fans would love to have this team be just like this team. And plus he played for a great coach in Paul Brown, who's underrated in his respect, because when you talk about the greatest coaches, do they mention Paul Brown? They talk about, Vince Lombardi and Bill Walsh and obviously Bill Belichick, but this Paul Brown guy is great too. So the Browns dominate the AAFC, winning 4 consecutive titles, going undefeated in 1948, and they set all the league's attendance records. Another game that stood out in 1950 was it was the first game of the season. It was a matchup between the Cleveland Browns and the two-time defending NFL champion, the Philadelphia Eagles. It was anticipated by the football fans at that time. It was the belief that the powerful Eagles would hammer at the Browns. They thought they were inferior, but Graham and the Browns used their superior skill to embarrass the Eagles 35-10. So when you look at this team, man, this team was just one of the all-time greats, one of the all-time great teams, and they had that back then. The Browns were 10-2 that year. They beat the Rams 30-28. Graham threw like 4 touchdowns against the Rams. He's just spectacular. In the championship game, going there 10 straight years. That's his legacy. And also he averaged 10 yards or more per attempt in 3 seasons. And also he became the first player to wear a face mask on his helmet. And he was very innovative off the field and productive on the field. And not only that, what stands out with the quarterback position, when you look at the style of play that Graham did as a quarterback, this guy was the greatest winner, period, as a quarterback. He was like the Bill Russell of the NFL. He won 7 championships. That's a lot. So, Otto Graham, salute to him. You're almost coming down to the end of this broadcast, Spreaker. This is the Rashad Mitchell Show. I'm your host, Rashad Mitchell. Next, we're going to take a look at another player who definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame real soon as a first ballot. His name is LaDainian Tomlinson. No question. LaDainian Tomlinson, during his first 7 years in the league, was part Walter Payton and part Barry Sanders. Tomlinson was a running back who can catch passes like a wide receiver, block linebackers as if they were small children, and could throw passes when he had to. He became the 4th fastest player to reach 10,000 rushing yards, accomplishing the feat in only his 106th NFL game, scoring 129 touchdowns in total over those first 7 seasons, while throwing for 7 more. Tomlinson, you see, came into the league with a chip on his shoulder. Remember, he went to Texas Christian. He didn't go to the University of Texas, Michigan, or Alabama, for example. But he was still able to make his mark as a running back in the NFL. Speaks for itself what I just mentioned about this guy. Tomlinson, in 2003, I think his second season, He ran for 1,683 yards and 14 touchdowns in his second year. Then the next year he ran for 1,645 yards and 13 touchdowns. So in 2004, he ran for 1,335 yards and he scored 17 touchdowns. In 2006 was a magical year. This was his MVP year, where he scored 28 touchdowns. He averaged 5.2 yards per carry, and he ran for 1,815 yards. He caught 56 passes for 508 yards and 3 more touchdowns. So he had arguably the finest individual running back year of any running back. And this team went to a 14-2 record, but they did not win the Super Bowl because they lost to the Patriots at home in the playoffs. And that team, 2006 team, might have been one of the best teams not to win a championship, because that's how great they were in 2006. But that's symbolizes or epitomizes Thompson's career. He was a great running back, and he could definitely be in the Hall of Fame. So he was number 22 on Steve Silverman's list of the top 60 NFL players of the last 60 years. Coming close to the end of the podcast, the Rashad Mitchell Show, live on Spreaker.com. Next one, this is going to be my last one, is John Hannah, who played offensive line for the New England Patriots. He was a great player from 1973 to 1985, a 9-time Pro Bowler. He weighed 6'3". No, his size was 6'3". He weighed 265 pounds, but despite that, he was a 9-time Pro Bowler, 7-time first-team All-Pro, and he's always been labeled the greatest offensive lineman to ever play. He was just a dominant offensive lineman. He was the 4th overall pick in the 73 draft. So like I said, his numbers speak, his credentials speak for itself. You're a 9-time Pro Bowler, a 7-time first-team All-Pro selection. He did his thing. He was a great offensive lineman. And again, offensive lineman does not get a lot of respect, a lot of attention, because they don't play a big name position. They don't get glorified as a great player, but they are great players. If it was for them, you can't run the ball, you can't pass the ball. So that is John Hannah, a great offensive line for the New England Patriots, a 7-time first-team All-Pro, as well as a 9-time Pro Bowler who played from 1973 to 1985. So that concludes my broadcast of the Rashad Mitchell Show. I thank you for listening, and those who are going to be listening later. I concluded my part 4 of this book that I'm talking about, and I'll continue to do that tomorrow. So until then, God bless. Thanks for listening.